So this evening we're still at stage 5 of load shedding. That's for today and tomorrow at least. Hopefully less stringent power cuts in the coming days. But of course it's all having a crippling effect on our economy, particularly when coupled with the increased fuel prices. The agricultural sector is warning of the disruptive impact of rolling blackouts. And to tell us more, I'm joined by AgriSA Executive Director Christo van der Rede. Christo, thank you very much for joining us. You know, we tend to think of the farming sector being driven by tractors and generators, but obviously load shedding is having a massive impact on the entire supply chain. So just talk me through the impact it's been having.
Electricity is a very important driver of agricultural activity, especially on farms. On farms, you have pivots or irrigation systems that require electricity to irrigate, especially your seedlings. You also require electricity to drive your packaging machinery in your pack houses. And then, very importantly, you need electricity to sustain your cold chain facilities, because if you do not keep your fruit, vegetables, meat in a cold storage facility, you can compromise the quality and it will be rejected by retailers and your importers of products from other countries throughout the world. So it's very important for us that we make sure that electricity and the supply of electricity is not compromised the way it was compromised for the past almost 7 days due to load shedding level 6. And we are requesting government to really intervene because this is unacceptable.
Is the impact at this point purely that it adds to the bill for farmers and factories because they then have to resort to alternative power to keep those fridges going, to keep those irrigation systems working? Is it just a monetary consequence at this point?
Currently, it has a dual impact. You're right. Obviously, farmers lose money if there's no electricity to drive various production activities. But more so, farmers are also contemplating reducing the number of hectares they plant because it doesn't make business sense. And then, obviously, the third issue is you have to now pay your workers overtime because they cannot irrigate or they cannot work during the day because of load shedding, and it adds to the cost ultimately.
You say that something's got to be done, but really what can be done at this point? We've seen a crippling strike come to an end. Workers at Eskom have got a 7% increase. They've now promised to get back to work. It doesn't seem like there's anything more really that can be done. What would you like to see happen?
I think there's two issues here at stake. One, all of our power plants are supposed to be national key points. And it's the responsibility of government to protect our national key points from sabotage. We've seen that happening, and that for us is very, very disturbing. Yes, workers certainly have the right to strike, and they certainly have the right to put their demands on the table. But you cannot have a situation where national key points such as your power plants are being sabotaged. If anything happens to the extent where the entire network implodes, then it will have devastating impact on South Africa, and it will certainly threaten national security. Secondly, I think government must give in to the request by Eskom to expand their capacity. I think that is critical. Why the Department of Minerals and Energy does not want to assist Eskom with that request is really something that boggles the mind. Eskom requires more private sector partners to come on board to provide and expand the capacity to generate electricity, especially solar energy, and that's where they require the green light from government. At this point in time, government really push your foot around that issue, and that for us is a problem.
We've spoken before about the worrying implication of what's happened in Ukraine with the war there. What is the current situation in terms of availability of fertilizer and fertilizers produced in that part of the world, and also the availability of grain and the plan that farmers had to produce more grain? But you've also just told me this evening that because of load shedding, a lot of them are cutting back.
We've been very, very fortunate in that our farmers and our farming businesses have been in contact with various suppliers throughout the world. And that shows the resilience of our agriculture sector, that we have that ability to engage with various suppliers. And we've seen that our fertilizer suppliers have increased tremendously. We have also seen the price of some of our main commodities, such as wheat, soybeans, as well as other grains, have dropped remarkably. And that for us is very positive, because that will keep food inflation intact.
Let's talk about the fuel increase as well, because that, of course, is going to have a knock-on effect on the entire economy, but it's going to affect our agriculture sector as well. I was looking at the N4 protest where trucks have blockaded parts of the road around Mbombela. That, of course, is going to stop produce getting through. So that's an immediate short-term problem. But in terms of the fuel price increase, how is the agricultural sector going to be impacted if we are going to see more and more increases on top of what we've already had in the last year?
We are quite concerned about the impact of the increased diesel prices. That's why we've called on government to consider reducing the levies, and they've done that a couple of 2 months ago. We have also requested government to consider increasing the diesel rebates, because that is the money that farmers receive into their pockets if they use diesel, obviously, for agricultural purposes. And we trust that government will give consideration to it. But as I've alluded to in previous interviews, South Africa is in a position to become more self-reliant, especially in terms of petroleum, the production of petroleum from coal. We're also in a position to expand the activities or mining of phosphate at the Phalaborwa mine. And then what about the extraction of sulfur from sulfur dioxide that is released by Eskom into the air? Those technologies exist, and there are ways and means to become more self-reliant in terms of petroleum as well as fertilizer. And I think the private sector, together with government, should sit around the table and consider all of those options.
Very good suggestions. Very interesting indeed. Thank you so much for your time this evening. That was AgriSA Executive Director Christo van der Rede.